You're listening to the A Bit From Within podcast with Felicia Marty. You know what love is actually about is definitely not judgment. I know that for sure. Like, love is about that unconditional acceptance and support. And maybe that's what it all comes down to, is love for yourself, love for your work, love for your, the processes that you create in your life, love for your values. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the A Bit From Within podcast. I'm Felicia, here to share a little bit of what's been going on inside of me, hoping that it connects to some of whatever has been happening inside of you. I feel like change is in the air. And normally that wouldn't make me want to cry, but I guess that the kind of change that I feel like is kind of moving in, at least in my life, is one that feels both good and like it's all for the best, and I feel like things are really falling into place. However, it brings up a lot of pain around the sadness that's been. Like, for example, I guess I could sit here and talk about this all kind of like theoretically, but for example, my sister is getting ready to move to Florida, and no one in my family has ever made a huge life change like this. I lived in Silverton for a couple of months, but that was temporary. And my sister lived in Florida for a little while when she was in college doing the Disney College program. But again, that was temporary. And so to watch her pick up her entire life and make this huge change and figure out how to move herself from here to there, and all of the areas of her life that's going to impact. And even just this weekend, I was at her house trying to help her pack things up and figure out what goes where and what's getting shipped where and how, and having to watch her make those decisions around, like, what do you keep? And can you part with things that you really love if you don't need them anymore? They're just that part of letting go. And I found myself kind of in this observer position sometimes, just trying to kind of watch what's happening and kind of remember, like, this is extremely difficult. And I am so proud of her. I'm trying not to cry, because that's the thing. I'm going to miss her so much. She's like one of my best friends. I spend a lot of time with her. She's a huge part of my life. She's my like major dog watcher for my needy dog. But I know it's the right thing for her. I know that we have journeys that we need to take, and that's one of the things that I feel so blessed being a wedding photographer, is I have the extreme privilege of seeing so many amazing stories at this kind of culmination where they're uniting their lives together and taking this huge step forward together. And there's so many magical wedding stories, at least. I'm sure there's many other kinds of stories that are amazing too. Just the ones that I've heard at weddings are usually start with somebody who takes that leap of faith to move to a different state. And not that I'm putting that kind of pressure on my sister. I'm not saying that she has to go to find someone at all, because it's not about that. But it is about having the courage to try something and to go where your heart is feeling called. And I feel like that is really courageous and special. And it is also going to change a lot of things within like the family dynamic and travel plans moving forward, and just, all of those things. So nothing, again, like I said, it's nothing bad. It's just change is in the air. And it really has me kind of feeling a little bit seasick right now. We're a couple days into July. I can't even believe that. We're a couple days into July. Almost a week, actually. Wow, that's crazy. And I again, I'm feeling the seasick feeling because for all of June, I felt like, wow, damn, this is like my busiest month. I was so scared of how I was going to cope through all of this. I didn't have any major meltdowns. I planned things accordingly. I stayed on top of everything. I was feeling so good. And then as soon as July hit, I feel like I did not fall apart. And if I were to say I was falling apart, I'd be so over exaggerating. But there's been a few things that I feel like I have not been able to keep up with myself with. Like all of June, I feel like I was able to really balance what I needed. And then July has come and I feel like I've been pulled towards what other people have needed from me. And in that, I've lost a little bit of myself, and I'm trying to figure out like, okay, I want to get back on track. I was feeling so good in June. I need to get back. And I think a lot of that probably just had to do with a lot of very intentional energy and like space and boundaries that I had to set in order to survive. And then I kind of probably laxed on that a little bit. For good reasons. Like you can't always be so strict with, everything that you forsake all the other people in your life. But it did remind me, like I'm sitting here thinking about how it's like, wow, that one time that I spent, 3 hours helping Dave with his project kind of set everything else off course for me a little bit. And it is okay. And it was worth it. And everything will be fine. But that's how fast it can happen. That is how fast you can get knocked off course if you're not really intentional. And I think, probably the other thing that I'm just trying to tell myself right now is like, it is okay to not be perfect all the time. It is okay to have had a really good plan and to not have maybe kept up with that plan a little bit and to allow yourself to figure that out now. And I need to give myself a little bit more grace with that. I think I'm just feeling a lot of fear about like getting back on schedule. And I feel like a little bit of this uneasiness, like if I can't get back on schedule, then everything's going to fall apart. And I am actively trying to work through that and remind myself, well, that's just not how life is. It's okay for things to be in flux. It's okay for things to not be perfect. It is okay to take steps forward and steps backwards. And I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Which that kind of segues us into our astro segment. So end of this week is going to be a new moon in the beautiful sign of Cancer. And I've been thinking a lot about Cancer energy lately because I am a Cancer sun. And I actually have or at least a couple of planets in Cancer as well. I have Mercury in Cancer and I also have Mars in Cancer. And, Cancers are kind of like when they're typically described are like moody, emotional, what else? Like homebodies. And those are not necessarily untrue things that can describe some Cancers, but I think what a lot of people forget, what I sometimes forget about Cancers, is that Cancer is also a cardinal sign. So it's a cardinal modality, and there is a cardinal of each of the elements. So Cancer is the cardinal water sign, and then the other cardinals would be Libra for air signs, and Aries for fire, and then Capricorn for earth. And what these all have in common is that they are the first sign, our first zodiac of the new season. And so there's a lot of initiating energy. There's a lot of leadership energy. There's a lot of active energy. Like there's a lot of strength in each of these zodiac signs. And I think that sometimes Cancers can kind of get this like reputation for being weak because of the emotions, but that's not an actual true depiction of what's strength or what's weakness, right? It's not like strength is just never crying and being these blazing warriors that just, kind of push through anything to get anything, to fight for whatever, right? It's like there is strength in being receptive. There is strength in feeling your emotions. There is strength in being connected to your intuition. There is strength in making plans. And I've just been trying to think about that a little bit. And so I'm very excited for this new moon in Cancer. When the moon moves into Cancer as well, sun will be there as well, and the sky will turn dark. And what's also kind of cool about this month's new moon is that the last couple, moon cycles, we've been in eclipse season, and that has just, along with a very long Mercury retrograde and the eclipse season, like there was just a lot of that 2-step forward, 1-step back energy, or 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. This idea of like you go and you come back, you go and you come back, and feeling as though maybe there's like some unveiling of information. And that's not always something that you realize in the moment. Maybe it's something more like in hindsight, you look back and you're like, wow, I have learned the things that I needed to know in order to move forward. And now here we are. It's the beginning of summer. We're in the middle of this beautiful Cancer sign. We're through the eclipses. At least Mercury is not in retrograde. Other planets are in retrograde. That's fine. It's okay. But it is not just okay, but it is time for us to really start to re-solidify our intentions. And so I think that this is going to just be a beautiful, beautiful time to connect to your intuition and really carve out time to sit with yourself. If anything, we can use the water sign inspiration, right? Like Cancer is a water sign. And so what are ways that we can kind of use the water element as inspiration? We can meditate. Meditation is such a watery thing, it's like you can think of like being a fetus in, the womb, literally like growing and developing inside of water or fluid. Also, you can think of the way that like rain falls, or the way that rain gathers in a lake or a puddle or whatnot, how water moves. And you can think about that for yourself in terms of how you want to receive things right now, and also how you want to move, how you want your energy to flow, how you want your life to flow. Water can be so, so healing. I think of, for so many of us, and I know so many water signs out there, but and you don't have to be a water sign to connect deeply to the water element. Water is healing. Sometimes we need to just say, like, we need to go to the beach, or we need to go to the lake, or we need to go for a walk to a pond, like we need to take a bath. There's so much about us that goes to the water to be healed. So use that, think about that this week as, the skies turn dark, and maybe think about the ways in which, you're feeling like you're ready to sow some intentions, and even just to really invoke that feeling of like, I am ready. I am ready to claim what's in front of me. I'm ready to, plant some seeds, to sow these intentions, to act on my intuition. And yeah, I think this is going to be a really powerful time for that. Let's take a quick break, and I'll be back to share a little bit more of what's going on within. So I have been thinking about what I want to share about this week, and it hit me a little bit earlier today. I wanted to talk about why I think it's important to do the right thing. And I guess I have to admit, that's coming from that one Enneagram type that is a little bit rooted in ideas of what's right and wrong. And that's kind of funny to admit, because in general, I feel like I am not a very black and white person. I feel like I deeply understand the gray scale. But I guess that idea of like what's right or wrong, or that judgment that sometimes comes out of me, is a little bit more in terms of maybe like ethical decisions, or like what is the most noble thing to do. So I guess I might figure out a little bit more of that while I talk to you about a couple of these examples that I've been thinking about. So, the first thing I was thinking about is how important it is to do the right thing, even when you're not being appreciated, even when you're not being really acknowledged, even when the best parts of you are being overlooked. And it is really hard to do the right thing when you're up against those things. How this kind of showed up for me recently, or a test of this, is you guys know, I'm in the middle of a busy wedding season. And kind of how it works, because you guys know I'm a little type A, and I think that's extremely important when it comes to preparing for your wedding day, at least when it comes to the photography. Because, for example, if I don't know what my clients really want and value, then I could go and shoot anything and then not be held, accountable for having got or not got what they were wanting. So we do a lot of prep work with our couples, talking about the different family combinations, what's typical, what's not typical for them, but that they want, what makes sense from a family perspective, just trying to really, really educate people on the shot list, but also the timeline. Because I've said this before, but like wedding days go so fast. And if you've never been married, you probably have no idea of how fast it really goes. But I see it happen all the time with couples where it's just like the day just it flies. And so having a solid timeline actually allows you and protects you to be able to get everything that you want, experience it fully, try to be as present as possible, because, I have to marry that part of me that is, just so believes in being present and having an open heart, especially on a day like your wedding day. So really try to work on that. So, of course, sometimes things change from the time we initially create the wedding timeline to the weeks leading up to the wedding. So, of course, we expect some small changes. Usually the bigger changes, I would hope that they would include me in on that. Sometimes it happens, most of the time. Occasionally it doesn't. And I recently had a wedding where the timeline that we had originally discussed and then the timeline that they had expected out of us the day of the wedding was not very close. And this couple had a 5-hour package, and we had to kind of figure out when we were going to use that time. So it seemed like there were maybe some different ideas about what was going to be important. And so as I was kind of on the final call, like trying to get on the same page as both of them, trying to present options around like, hey, we could start at this time and I could do this, or we could start at this time and this would happen. And I'm just trying to give them the whole scope. I was on the phone with both of them, but I also felt like I was mostly on the phone with the bride, and then the groom was just kind of like half listening, like half weighing in, half not, like kind of involved, but kind of not. And as I'm trying to, assess, like I could hear that the bride's was concerned about like maybe not actually having time to get her getting ready photos. So as I'm trying to offer suggestions, he just says something like, I wish I could remember the exact wording, but it was something to the extent of, it's not worth it. And like, I'm not exaggerating when I say that, like, in that moment, I knew that I was not valuable to him. Like, in his mind, I was just a photographer who was just taking pictures of their day, that wasn't, an artist creating this thing, or a human who cares deeply about capturing people's weddings the best way possible. I was, not an object, but kind of like I was just a service, just a person who takes pictures. And I was really hurt by that. I was hurt because I do care so deeply. And I think every single one of us at least in some things, it doesn't have to be your job, but in some area of your life where you show up with your whole heart, you want to be seen for that. You want people to recognize how much effort you're putting forward. And, you know, I have my business has grown to the point where I do have a lot of package deals where some people are able to book with me without having, fallen in love with my work or gone through a big interview process. And so maybe like they're not necessarily like the ideal client, or maybe they are not expecting like this dream match of photography. Maybe they don't value that. I have to know that I'm running that risk. But at the same time, what I naturally, I think as a human, like in kind of like self-protection went to is like, hey, like if you don't value me, like what if I don't have to value you then? Like maybe I'll just show up and I'll just take pictures and I won't give a crap if you get these getting ready photos that you want. And I won't take time to put together this timeline and shot list that goes so above and beyond what other photographers out there do. And, what if that? And I kind of felt myself get kind of mad and get kind of self-protective. And then I, thought about it, of course, and I'm like, I can't show up any other way because I don't take care of my clients the way that I do because of how much they value me. I do it because it is the right thing to do, because it is how I would hope to be treated by somebody that I hired, whether I was paying, or booking them through the package, or whether I had sought out and found them through hundreds of photographers and just loved them so much, or whether I'd seen them grow on Instagram and fell in love with their work. Like, however I found somebody that I had hired, I would hope that they would give me the best version of their services and the best version of their self. And I knew that's how I needed to show up. And I also had to kind of sit with the parts of me that also felt like I had to go in and try to prove how good I am, because that's another element, right? Like he kind of wounded my ego a little bit, like made me feel like I was not worthy or not valuable. And I had a part of my ego that was like, I'll show him how amazing I am. Like, I'll show what a great photographer I am and how great I take care of people. And I had to keep checking my ego at the door and being like, it doesn't matter. It does not matter. It doesn't matter what he thinks, because I could show up early and stay late and run around like a chicken with my head cut off and, put all of this pressure on my back and carry it around. Will that make him value me? I don't know. That's not up to me. And when you're searching for that kind of validation outside of yourself, it's never a good recipe. And so I had to stop myself at the door and of that door anyway, and remind myself, why do I do what I do? I do what I do because, like I said, I believe that it is the right thing to do. And I think that's why, maybe I shouldn't even be using the term like right thing. But I guess what I mean by that is it's the thing that is most closely aligned to what I firmly believe in, like what my personal values are. And I think that is the piece that is the most important, because you know what? At the end of the day, like when we go to bed at night and we, tuck ourselves into bed, like we have to live with the actions that we've taken, the way that we've shown up in the world, and only we know what goes into making the decisions that we've made. And not everyone's going to understand why you do what you do. Right? So it doesn't even matter like if it is necessarily the right thing, but it's the thing that you have to do so that you can be on good terms with yourself. And it was really the wedding ended up being a really interesting experience because I was really bracing myself for being kind of like, well, one, just the timeline felt a little scary to me and not how I typically like to do things, but I knew I had to just roll with it. But the day ended up being so pleasantly surprising. Like everything just kept flowing perfectly. Like, and everything got done on time and everything was beautiful. And honestly, everybody was wonderful to me in person. Like it felt like a big, I don't want to say I was going to say love fest. That's not true at all. It did not feel like a love fest, but it felt respectable and it felt good. And so of course just was excited about that. And I had myself thinking like, okay, like this is great. Like everything ended up so great. Like this is going to just keep going great now. Like I was, it seemed like it was going bad, but it wasn't bad at all. It was all good. And I get home and I do my normal thing. Like I stay up late finding a sneak peek and I pull a bunch of photos that I can send over to them so that they can actually have photos from their wedding day right away because it's so exciting and it's exciting for me, it's exciting for them. And so I send over all of the photos and then before I know it, there's been a post published on Instagram that is, celebratory of their day and they've tagged a different photographer. Like it's a different photographer's work. It was like a friend at their wedding who had taken a picture and apparently also runs a photography business. And oh my gosh, it made me so furious because I do have an exclusivity clause in my contract, and that clause is not about just like being the only person there, right? Like, I guess like on the surface, that's kind of what it is, but it's really a way of protecting the quality of the work and being able to, control like what's happening during the day. Like you don't want to show up and have them like, oh, a bride's hired someone and a groom's hired someone and now you're both trying to do what you need to do, you've been hired to do. It's just protection from that. And this photographer who was there, she didn't get in my way at all. She didn't talk to me at all. She didn't even let me know that she was taking pictures. And I realized I'm like, that's actually what bothered me the most is I make exceptions to that exclusivity clause all the time. Like there's plenty of people who are like, hey, my uncle's a photographer, or my friend's really getting into wedding photography and I'd love for her to be able to take a couple shots. Is that cool with you? What do you think? And of course, like I'm not here to be Miss Crazy contract person. I'm here to make sure that I can do my job for you. And I just would have really appreciated the heads up. And it felt, again, like from going to be like, yes, like this is awesome. Like I feel so valued. I worked so hard for these people. I did the right thing and like it all paid off, to instantly being back down and being back in that place of my ego being like, yep, even though everything did go great and even though you did everything right, you're still getting kind of what felt like a slap in the face. And it again made me go back to this idea of like, why do you do what you do? Like it made me wish like, like to be honest, like what I was thinking about is like, why do I work so hard? Why did I send over all these sneak peeks? And why did I, stay up late doing this? And why am I, busting my butt for this person who doesn't appreciate me? And I just, again, I had to stop and come back to that idea of like, sometimes you just need to do the right thing. And a big thing for me in my business is I really value fairness. So I like to, I guess not even my business, in my life, I value fairness. So I'm not going to treat, one client better than another client. I'm going to treat everybody the same because that's what I want to do. I believe in that. And so just had to be like, you know what, this is okay. This is how this story is going down, and you may not be seen for all that you put into this, but that doesn't mean it didn't matter, because you know who it mattered to? It mattered to me. And so I guess that's this whole story is just that encouragement that sometimes the right thing, and I put that in quotes, is not going to be something that other people are going to validate you for or that they're going to understand. And some of the hardest things for all of us are to do that thing that is actually kind of maybe even like conflicting against what other people want, the thing that people are either not appreciating you for, not seeing you for, or on the other side of the coin are like that they're judging you for. And I was thinking about that today too, because I have a friend who might have to put her dog down, and I'm gonna cry thinking about that. No, but I hate thinking about an animal's life being cut short. And I look at my doggie and I just think the years are so short with them. They're so precious. I think any dog lover or any animal lover knows like how painful it is to lose an animal and how difficult that decision is. And in this case with this friend, it's a very complicated situation because there's a $3,500 surgery and rehab that, could save this dog's life. But the dog also has seizures and arthritis and is in a lot of pain. And it's like, what's the right decision? And what I had to encourage was just, there is no, right decision. It's a matter of what is right for you guys, and only you. Like, a million people could look in and judge you and say, you have money, you are this, you have that, you should do whatever it takes to save your dog. Your dog didn't choose, this life, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's up to you. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. Everyone's entitled to their opinion on that. But at the end of the day, only the dog owner understands the real truth of what's happening with their dog and their ability to take care of that animal. And, I was speaking of, what's the right thing to do. I think, my friend who was talking to me about this said that, that they'd just been getting a lot of flack from the people in their life. They had called up another friend and was expecting support, and instead just got totally judged. And I thought about that. I'm like, that is just such crap. Like, yes, we all have our opinions about things, but don't we kind of know that sometimes it's not our place to run our mouth? Like, sometimes our loved ones or our friends, they just need our support. And there comes a time when the right thing to do is not speak up about what we would do or about what we think they should do, and instead just listen. And I think about that all the time, especially in my relationship with Dave, because one, definitely not perfect, definitely learning always to be a better listener. It's always hardest with the people that we're very, 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 very close to and so, connected to. But I've been thinking about the things that are going right for us in our relationship and our communication, like where we're really finding big strides. And so much of it has to do with validation and support. And actually, Dave is getting ready to go on this trip, and I think I've mentioned this last week. Like, I've been trying to, help him get ready for this trip. And of course, I've just been a total enabler. And one of the things I've been reflecting back on is like how much better things would have been for both of us if, instead of just bulldozing over the situation and taking control and doing things, that instead I just lent my support and said, I'm here to support you however you need support. And, I might also have had to watch some mistakes get made or and again, that's in my view, things that I would have done or looked out for or thought ahead on. But is that actually a mistake on his part? No. I mean, that's somewhat subjective, right? But what I'm trying to say is that what one person deems as another person's mistake is part of their growing process and their learning process. And what love is actually about is definitely not judgment. I know that for sure. Like, love is about that unconditional acceptance and support. And I just think there's something to that, maybe that's what it all comes down to, is love for yourself, love for your work, love for your, the processes that you create in your life, love for your values, and being able to show up and to choose that, and to, at sometimes maybe really have to remember that, like, the things that you say, they do affect other people. And maybe even just thinking about that sometimes, of like, what is it that is coming out of my mouth that could affect another person for the worse or for the better. It's kind of like, that saying from, I think it's from Bambi, like, well, I'm sure it was not originally from Bambi, but I'm thinking of it from Bambi, of like, if you don't have anything nice to say, like, don't say anything at all. And maybe that's the right thing to do. I don't know. That's what I've been thinking a little bit about today, and I would love to know, your thoughts on that. In this is definitely a gray area, which again is so funny. Speaking of like doing the right thing and not doing the wrong thing, but it is a gray area because there are a million ways in our lives that we need to show up as our best self. And a million ways that we could also be hurt by others who are, maybe doing the best they can. Maybe they're moving through life a little bit carelessly at times, not realizing that they're hurting other people. But we've got to do the right thing by ourselves. Sometimes that's just forging on ahead. Sometimes it's standing up for ourselves. Sometimes that is making really tough decisions that only we can make without the validation of others. But ultimately, we've got to just keep pushing ahead and doing what we can, to do the right thing not by ourselves, but like for ourselves. That's the thing, is like, at the end of the day, like, we are alone. My dad told me once, you're born alone and you die alone. And as harsh as that sounds, and it does sound very harsh, the part about it that's true is that you can't live your life for other people. You can live your life in communion with other people. You can appreciate others. You can value others. You can honor others. You can love others. But you can't make anyone else do anything. So, all right, I guess that's a little bit of rambling, but I think you guys all get my sentiment. Let's do a quick card drawing and see if the universe is going to weigh in on any of this. We use a little bit of a different deck. I think I've only used this deck once in a podcast, and it is the Ask and It Is Given cards from Esther and Jerry Hicks. And so let's just give a little shuffle here. These cards are a little bit oversized for my hands, and they're very slippery. So we're going to see what happens here. All right, this says, I am becoming consciously aware of my inner being. And the message on the back is, we refer to that non-physical you as your inner being or your source. It is not important what you call that source of energy or life force, but it is important that you are consciously aware of when you are allowing a full connection to it and when you are restricting it in some way. It's like this little tidbit of information. I've been thinking about this exact thing with all of this new moon energy as I was kind of making my new moon guide for the week. And also just with this week, there's a little bit more spaciousness for me to get back on track. And I've been thinking about, just this very thing of like being connected to source or to myself, to my inner being, or whether and how it is being restricted, because, well, there are parts of me, like, it's like we want to live in the flow. We want to live in, like in the chi, like in everything just kind of moving the right way, everything in perfect sync. And sometimes we're driving down the road and we're hitting every red light, sometimes physically, sometimes metaphorically or energetically. And we can't just force it. We can't, I think we can practice getting better and better about being in the flow, but it's not like there's just a switch that we can force inside of us that will make every light turn green. Instead, it's, sometimes it's a letting go, sometimes it's a receiving, sometimes it's a pushing forward. And that's just something I like, that way this card says it's something that we need to become consciously aware of. There's power in that. And this new moon this week is definitely, I think, going to be very helpful in terms of moving ourselves forward consciously. So take that with what you will. I hope that you are somewhat inspired, or at least maybe you get my vibe that sometimes it's just like, sometimes you're going to get hurt. Sometimes you know how that feels. And sometimes you just have to keep pushing forward and look for that next positive moment of being valued, of things going right, of being in the right place at the right time. So, all right, everyone. One final note before I sign off here. I have just announced July's live class. So as you guys might know, I just started offering live classes. They're done on Zoom right now. They're yoga classes done via Zoom, but it's a moment to kind of chat and actually connect with other people in the A Bit From Within community. Last time we did it last month, it was so refreshing, so rejuvenating. And then kind of follow that up by a 60-minute gentle yoga class. And I swear, I think I mentioned this last time, like the last class was so incredible. I think everyone left on like such a positive kind of like high note. It felt like so energizing. And so this month we are going to be doing the live class on July 18th at 11 a.m. There will be a link on Instagram and on the website to sign up for that live class. So if you are interested, go ahead and do so. This class is going to be open to everyone, and by the end of the summer, we'll be transitioning these once-a-month live classes to community level members of the Patreon page. So if you are not a member yet, please consider joining my Patreon page to support the work that I'm doing. I share yoga classes that you can watch at any time. There's tons of pre-recorded classes. There's a huge library. Classes you can do in the morning, in the evening, restorative, for balance, for peace, for surrender, for letting go, like all different topics of all different lengths. And I know that practicing at home can be very difficult, but if you need any help or support with that, I can give you some ideas that maybe will make it a little bit easier, if that's right for you. And I would just love to connect with you. And I, of course, love and appreciate your support of the podcast. If you are listening to this podcast with ads, you can always subscribe to the $6 a month level member of the Patreon page and get not only ad-free versions of the podcast that you can listen to at any time, but you can also get all access to our entire guided meditation library, which has over 50 meditations as well. And you'll be supporting the work that I am doing and sharing. So, that's all. That's my little plug. I appreciate you so much, and I can't wait to connect with you again soon.